everybody, welcome to First Glance with Jody, Vance. We're deviating off the usual and we're connecting with one of my favorite people on the planet. I'm not kidding you. He is Rob Fay. You know him, you love him. He is the president and co-founder of NationExtremeWrestling.com. You need to write that down.
Got it.
NationExtremeWrestling.com. It's catching on like wildfire, Rob. I love that we get to connect on this subject. You know I love my sports. I love it. But I'm not an aficionado of wrestling, but I know how much fun it is. And for the people who love it, it's next level. So tell us all about NationExtremeWrestling.com.
Well, first and foremost, I got to say that your background, by comparison to my background, makes me feel like I need to go to IKEA right after this meeting.
Off you go.
Yes, and I will. But you know what? What's interesting is previously working for Nation Extreme Wrestling, I worked with the Vancouver Canadians. So it's almost like nostalgia moving over to nostalgia, because in minor league baseball, you're talking about families, you're talking about a historic venue. And that's essentially what we're building with Nation Extreme Wrestling. There's so many of our fans, Jody, that will say, oh, I used to watch wrestling with my grandfather or my father, or, you know, what have you. We all did. So
Gene Kiniski, Galen and I were just talking about it. It's like, we used to watch Stampede Wrestling with my grandfather. You know, it was like what we did. And it does bring that back. And do we need that so much right now, Rob?
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we started right in the middle of the pandemic. So I don't know if it was stupid following stupid, but Chris Perry and I decided we were going to go right in the thick of the storm. But the beauty of it is anything to take away from the norm. You know, with everything going on around the world right now, there's a lot of bad news swirling in the sky. So to be able to pull our fan base away, even for just a couple of hours, and let them be a kid again, or at least experience things that they'd enjoyed at a better time, I think is part of the reason that we were able to capture a little lightning in a bottle.
I love this. And you said that about like being a kid again, but also being able to be a grown-up again. Because what I really dig about these events, and we'll get into the specifics of, there's one that's coming up, depending on when you're watching or listening to this podcast or video, we'll tell you about some of the events that you can attend. I like the idea that there's an all ages event with that nostalgia piece, that mom or dad can also have an adult beverage if they want to. Like there's this sort of vibe to it that is kicking it old school, like seriously old school. There's no beer garden vibe to it. It's just like everybody gets to be an adult and a kid at heart, and bring their kids to enjoy it if they want to as well. And it's wild.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've learned over the first, I guess you would say, 8 months of this project is just that you can do this for everybody. And, you know, I think back to Nat Bailey Stadium, I keep going back to that because I had been immersed in it for 15 years. So you think of the fact that you can go to a baseball game and enjoy the sunshine and a beer, or you can sit beside your kid or your dad and enjoy that experience as well. So we're very lucky to be tapped into a market. Vancouver's a very smart fan base, and they know when you're cheating them, but they also know when you're doing it right. And I think that's a part of the reason that we've been able to kind of walk a steady line here, is the fact that we acknowledge both demographics and have done a pretty good job with it.
Now, I know the backstory of NationExtremeWrestling.com. I know the backstory because of you and Chris and your passion for this. And when we were, as a company at EQUITY.GURU, branching off into this, like along with your sports program, which is amazing. And I love that Rob Simpson is part of that as well. I mean, we've got this sort of team of sports nerds in a financial environment as well. Like we're branching off into all kinds of stuff here. But the thing that you and Chris really tapped into was how the pandemic shut down the ability for wrestlers, these superstar wrestlers, to have a platform and a stage to perform on. And your mindset of just like, let's go and do it has really panned out in a magnificent way. I'd like to congratulate you on that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think Chris deserves a lot of that credit as well, because the reality is not a lot of business minds would think to do that, because usually you want that long runway where you've got the buffers on either side and everything's going to always go well. Sometimes you've got to take that challenge on. And what was good about it is the fact that with the pandemic, you want to talk about a silver lining, is a lot of our wrestlers couldn't go into the United States. So we had everybody kind of locked in Canada with an opportunity to showcase what we were capable of. So now that the borders opened up and loosened, they start to go abroad, a lot of them are choosing to stay here because we had enough of our own runway to show them how we could do business. And that's really, Jody, one of the things that I think we've kind of really defined ourselves with. There's a lot of carny when it comes to wrestling, a lot of guys that are wrestlers and couldn't make it to the big stage, so they create their own brand and go with it. But you got to run
Yeah.
this like a business. It's 2022, and people want to make sure that their health is taken care of. They want to make sure that there's diversity and inclusion. They want to make sure that the platform is clean enough for them to be able to, you know, showcase their talents. So that, for us, I think, is why we were able to make a lot of hay. Is A, we had these wrestlers kind of contained to Canada, and B, is we did it right.
And you do it right in another way as well, Rob, if I may, knowing what I do about you and Chris. You're ethical humans. So you're looking at this as a way to give back to that community. So there was a time, perhaps, in some areas of this lane, this sports and entertainment lane, that the wrestler was left to their own devices with regard to how they do launch their brand around the circus that was created. That was a multi-billion-dollar creation, by the way. But there's like this piece of it that gives a little something back to these athletes, to these performers.
Well, we've come up with a couple of different things. And I just want to preface this by saying not all of the wrestling community is bad. There are some really good people that have done some good things.
Totally.
Unfortunately, it's kind of like a hair in the soup, if you will. There's always one thing that kind of spoils it for everybody from time to time. But I would say Chris's idea, and I have to give a shout out to Priscilla Choi, formerly of Equity Guru, for coming up with this idea that Chris and I looked at each other and said, we have to do this. It's a tipping app, which means you could be watching the game. Imagine watching the Canucks and you think Alex Burrows or whoever it is, insert player's name here, is doing a great job.
Yeah.
And you can go on your phone and within 2 clicks, 2 pages, tip that person. That is an additional revenue stream. And that's what Chris and I have really tried to do, is in addition to these wrestlers getting paid higher than they get paid anywhere else in Canada, we've created a tipping app, more lanes for them to sell their merchandise, more lanes for them to be seen, so that now instead of just showing up and getting your payout, which is usually pretty modest, now these guys can look at Nation Extreme Wrestling and say, boy, I can actually make a go at this because there's enough opportunity here to truly make some money. And in one of the world's most expensive cities, that is a non-negotiable. You got to help them out.
And in one of the world's most expensive cities, this Saturday in Port Coquitlam, Terry Fox Theater. I mean, that's going to be an absolute blast. There's a barbecue, and at 7, the first bell sounds, which is so cool. Mm-hmm. But June 24th, dude, Commodore Ballroom.
Yeah, so get a load of this. They called us a couple of months ago and said, hey, we've got an event, Cinco de Mayo. Would you guys be interested? I don't even think he got to the word interested. And I was like, yeah, we'll take it. So we went to the Commodore Ballroom. 950 people packed that place. And before the end of the show, I want to say before our main event, their promoter was like, we need to do this annually. So we can't let you know everything just yet. But Jody, I promise you the Commodore is going to be a very big part of Nation Extreme Wrestling. And I would go just really quickly to circle back on Port Coquitlam. Every city that we go to, whether it's Richmond, Vancouver, whether it's Port Coquitlam, we donate $500 to a local student who's trying to get towards their post-secondary education, because we understand that if we're going into a community, we can't just open up the doors and say, pay here. We've got to be able to give back. And that's one of those things that I think puts us a little bit ahead of everybody else. And I'm not talking about that straight up, but I'm just saying philanthropically, you got to go into a community and let them know that you're marching to their drum, that you're not just barreling in and leaving, that you're giving back. So that's something that we're really proud of. And to do that at Terry Fox Theater of all places, I think fits the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish.
I really do too. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit there with your hint with the Commodore, but you do have some shows planned, a series planned in fall and winter as well, right?
Yeah, so we've been pretty strategic. We wanted to do something on Pride because we have a lot of non-binary, we have gay, we have all-inclusive. It's a big deal for us. And we looked at our calendar and we're like, we can't not be a part of that. We're going to be there for UBC Homecoming. We're going to be there for Halloween. We've picked our dates to really make sure that we could make our footprint strong in the community. But that Pride one is a really special one to us. So we went out, we got some of the best talent in North America for that show. Kid Bandit, who might not be a household name, is a meteoric rise right now through the ranks. And they're all coming to Vancouver for Pride weekend because they saw what we were doing. And to do that at Hollywood Theater, another majestic venue in Kitsilano, is something that we're super proud to do of as well.
I love that. Do you have a favorite wrestler? Is that like choosing your favorite child? I mean, how does that work?
I would say I do, but you have to go by generation. So I would say this generation, The Rock, the old generation Macho Man Randy Savage. And if you really want to go back, I mean, gosh, the old timers are the best, but Gene Kiniski, who's right from this neck of the woods, is definitely one of the Canadians that kicked it off for everybody. So you asked somebody to pick one. Jody,
yeah, it's hard. I know,
it's hard.
I know. Gene Kiniski, I might add, though, as being a part of the BC Sports Hall of Fame, he's going into the Hall this year.
I know.
He got called to the Hall. That's so great.
I don't want to say long overdue, but Jody, you know why that's a big deal? Because a lot of people don't look at wrestling as a sport. And to have inclusion into the BC Sport Hall of Fame is a really big pathway that Gene's kind of blazed for what I hope are maybe a few more wrestlers to come down the pipe as well. I am so glad that Tom Yanek, yourself, and everybody associated with that brand decided to open that lane for us, because there's a lot of great athletes that have come through this city and this province over the last 40, 50 years. So to get that acknowledgement is massive.
Like the athletic prowess that is, you know, akin to Cirque du Soleil, and you know, where there is it is acrobatic, it is gymnastic, it is, you know, it is a hard hitting sport.
It's tough. I can't do it.
No, I can't either. That's why we love it and watch it as we do. Now let's talk long-term business plan here. I alluded to it earlier, you know, WWF, WWE, like billions of dollars made off of wrestling, and here with what you're doing with Nation Extreme Wrestling, NEW, new, I love it. Where do you see that going in terms of if somebody was looking to invest, if somebody wants to be a part of it, or what's your vision? What's your 5-year plan, Rob Fay?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that I think we're most proud of is we've almost paid off our debt. And for a business to be able to do that in our first year is extraordinary. What we've been able to do is create multi-year agreements with some pretty good brands that will be launching, oh gosh, I would say before the end of the summer. So if I'm an investor and I look at wrestling, I say to myself, okay, well, A, I want to see your books, but B, I want to see what the vision is for your, you know, broadening of your brand. Because it's cool to run Vancouver, but what's the bigger plan? It's why we put a maple leaf in our logo. It's why we called ourselves Nation Extreme Wrestling. We have visions of the Midwest. We have visions of the East Coast. We have visions of the Maritimes. And I think it took us, well, probably might even take us a few more months just to make sure that we have our framework in place. But when you have a venue, when you have a television deal, when you have the wrestlers in place, the best in Canada, if I'm an investor, I'm probably calling Chris Perry right about now saying, tell me a little bit more about this, because if you're just out to be the best in Vancouver, it's probably not a good investment. But if you've got a 5-year quote plan to go across the country and truly make it Nation Extreme Wrestling, now would be a great time to start kicking tires on that.
And our behind the scenes crew, Galen, who edits the videos that are the result. And let's talk about the technical investment. When you say paying off your debts, like from the get-go, you and Chris and the team really had a vision to make it slick, spend the money, not be, you know, pardon it, but half-assed about it. It's like, it's legit. And I was talking to Galen as we were preparing for you to join us on the Zoom call. And he was like, I'm editing their videos. I'm telling you, that Cinco de Mayo was like next level, and the crowd just lapped it up. And when you have that audience that's a specific, you know, definitely relatable, like banners up in the venue now are back. You know what I mean? Like this is the new rink board. This is the new, you know, on the jersey advertisement to be associated with an event that sells out the Commodore in this way. I'm excited by it. My promotional background, my sports hat, I applaud what you're doing. And I think it is just, it's super cool. Where do people find the ability to look back on some of the events? I guess we should go there.
I will say really quickly, we're 6 for 6 in selling out venues. The Commodore was the last hurdle for us to see if we were legit or not. So when we put in 950 people and had Live Nation coming to us, we knew we had kind of turned that corner. Yeah, it's worth a modest par putt, if you will. I think the key for us here is you want to work with good people. I mean, money comes and goes, and we know that in business, there's always ebbs and flows, but you got to work with a team that understands the vision. Chris obviously leads that vision. I'm the guy that gets down in the gritty places and makes sure that we do it right. And Galen's a tremendous asset. I didn't know he could edit video like that. So the fact is that we've started to, you know, broaden our fan base, but we've also started to broaden our staff, surround ourselves, I guess you would say, people that are better than us. And we're just all pushing the same way. So every wrestling match we've ever done is available at nationextremewrestling.com. We'll have an app that we're going to be launching within the next 2 months, hopefully by the end of summer. That will allow everything to come right to your mobile device. Because Jody, I can tell you this, before we had our first match, Chris and I looked at each other and said, we have to get into the phones. And we're very close. We've got one of the best companies in Canada. They've developed the Canadian Elite Basketball League app. They've done a number of musicians. So to be able to have everything on your phone where you can buy merchandise, watch shows, stream, do everything in one place, that was the vision, and that's why we're turning the corner.
NationExtremeWrestling.com, the president and co-founder, Rob Fay, my good friend. I'm glad to be on your team, and I'm super excited to just be a little fly on the wall as I watch this happen here at Equity Guru. I dig it. I dig it, dude. No, I love it. And I think my son will enjoy coming to the Commodore Ballroom and checking it out. Check out where his mom graduated. That's where our grad event was when I graduated from high school at the Commodore. Yeah, I know, random, right? But like that's Vancouver, you know, at its core, and making that a space with Live Nation that they're like, you got to come back, man. I love that. So congratulations. Come back again here, and I'm asking you back to report on all of these cool things, Rob. All right.
Awesome, Jody. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome, man. Peace out.